Portsmouth, Indiana. He runs the Indiana Family Policy Council.
I want to thank all of you for coming today. Is this mic on? Can you hear me okay? We are here to talk today about the Family Prosperity Initiative. This is a new initiative of the American Conservative Union. I'm Dan Schneider. I'm the Executive Director of the American Conservative Union. We have some special guests here today. I've got the guy who sets my salary and determines whether I remain hired or not, the chairman of my board, Matt Schlapp. We have other people today who will be on the main stage and in breakout panels to discuss this issue and related issues. Julian Appling from Wisconsin, Stan Swim from Utah is here. Of course, we've got Dennis Prager, but he's a man who will be introduced a little later. But families, how are families doing in America today? How are your families doing? There isn't a way to measure in a coherent, unified way. We know how well the Dow Jones is doing because we've got the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It's a number that tells us how well the Dow is doing. We know how jobs are doing because we've got monthly jobs reports that are reported by the Department of Labor. We know how many teenage suicide deaths there are. And we know whether heroin use is going up or down. These are all data points that are produced by the states to the federal government, and in some cases by universities and think tanks. But nobody's been able to figure out how you connect these things to measure the well-being of families, even though we've been able to do that same sort of thing to measure how well refrigerator sales are going. The Commerce Department measures the durable goods rate. We know how well refrigerators and washing machines are selling. The reason we've never been able to do this for families is because it's really, really hard, and it takes really, really smart people to get that done. It takes mathematicians to figure out how all the variables are connected. Well, thank goodness we've got really good, smart economists at the American Conservative Union Foundation, and they have been toiling away very hard to get this work done. That's what this briefing is about today. How we can measure the well-being of families, how that new index can be used by state-based think tank folks, activists, legislators, policymakers, so that sound policies can be created. This is a monumental step. It builds on the work of Bill Bennett and, back in the late 80s and early 90s, this little smart staffer to Bill Bennett at the time named Paul Ryan. So Paul will be joining us shortly. He's walking off the stage soon. He did some of the early work in this space that has allowed us to create this index. So that is an overview. I am now going to turn to my chairman, my boss, Matt Schlapp.
Thanks. So like Dan said, I'm the mathematician. No, it's just a joke. They keep explaining to me about how the math is going to work, Stan. I'm constantly confused as to what they're talking about. But here's what I do know, which is we are watching now at CPAC and across the country these voices of different types of conservatives. And we wonder how all this comes together, how all this wraps together. And one of the reasons why we're so excited, first of all, that the American Conservative Union Foundation is really finding its footing. And I hear a child crying, which is awesome, by the way. Thank you for that. That's what it's all about. But I'm so glad that the foundation is vibrant, because what we are going to do with this project is we're going to remind people, right? Strong families have a very strong economic impact. It's good for our economy. It's good for our country. And of course, the opposite is true too. Good policies that result in a strong economy, it's good for families. Hopefully we're going to prove both. And any of you, and I see several of you here who know this, but when you talk within a political context, people wonder, what are your motives? Where are you coming from? You're only saying that because you want this policy goal or that policy goal. But the fact is that we have to get to a point in some areas where the subjectivity goes away and there's objectivity. Don't you want that at this point? You know, when you read papers and everything else, you're tired of all the lenses that people put things through. We just want to see it. And we want to know how our families are doing. How are our families doing? I have my opinions. I have my biases. I want to know. And I want to know what states are doing it right and what states aren't doing it right. And actually, I think there's a lot of elected officials who are of goodwill. They actually want to do things to help families, but they're all screwed up sometimes in how they think that'll come about. So I think that this is one of the reasons why we're very excited. As you all know, the history of the American Conservative Union is a history that started in defeat, 1964, and it was about how do you pull people together in this country, certainly on the center right, and what do we do to make sure that happens? And part of that is getting our libertarian allies with our pro-family allies to come together, to work together to have strong families. And that's so much about what this is today. Like Dan said, we're really honored that the Speaker of the House is going to be here, and he has been speaking on the main stage, being interviewed in a really interesting format, and he'll be walking in any moment. But I also want to bring up Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager is the founder of Prager University and someone that you hear all the time on your radio dial. I want to say on behalf of the American Conservative Union, which puts on CPAC, it is our great honor to have you with us. That we want you to come forward, and everyone should let Dennis know how appreciative they are that he's here too.
Thank you. That was a great honor to hear from you like that. Thank you. This is a terrific thing, the Family Prosperity Initiative. I have 5 minutes, and I'm good for my word. When I'm told how long to speak, I speak. I'm used to it because I'm told all the time. In any event, you have to break for a commercial. So I have practiced for 33 years doing this. So let me say, I want to make 3 points about the state of the family. It is so problematic because for the first time in American history, and arguably in recorded history, we are now not forming families to begin with. You can't have prosperous families if you don't have families. So let me make 3 quick points. One is, I wrote a piece, which you can obviously find on the internet, National Review, and of course Town Hall. I say of course because that's produced by Salem, which is who sponsors my show, who makes my show possible. They syndicate me. In any event, I answered the question of white privilege with a very simple response. There is a privilege that dwarfs whatever white privilege might even exist, and that is two-parent privilege. That is the ultimate privilege for a child or an adult in the United States of America or anywhere else. It dwarfs the other because the white without 2 parents is in a much worse position financially, socially, in every other way than a black with 2 parents. It's just as simple as that. But nobody has a quick answer. That's the answer. I wish there were bumper stickers. The privilege that matters is 2-parent privilege, or the only privilege that matters. Number 2, marriage and family, and this is something we didn't know historically, at least not on a conscious level. They are not natural. They are values. I know that sounds bizarre because love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage, but it isn't true. Love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage if the society says so. But if the society doesn't teach you that, then they don't go together like a horse and carriage. That's the point. You've got to have it as a value. My friends, and certainly my wife, who's with me almost all the time, when we are always going out, I don't mean we go out a lot, we just eat out. She's a very lucky wife in at least one area. I prefer not to eat at home. It is a totally idiosyncratic part of me. But so we're out every night. So I ask waitresses, I ask the female that I will meet who's sitting next to me on an airplane, if she's under 30 and especially under 25, saying, I ask you a question. And of course, everybody always says yes. Why not? So it's very simple. So I will ask a 25-year-old, a 20-year-old, 28-year-old female, stranger to stranger. I'm curious if you could be guaranteed a great career or a great marriage, which would you prefer? And it is fascinating. Almost never is that I would say 50% of the time I get marriage. I want to just say that. But it's with great thought. They're torn. Those who say career say it immediately. Those who say marriage never say it immediately. They have to think, and they ask me questions. Well, if I'm guaranteed, does it mean I can't have the other? What do you mean exactly? And is it that? Is it because? And what is the capital of North Dakota? And so on. So, but it's depressing. It is depressing because they have been sold this bill of goods that happiness derives from a career. It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. What career will bring you the happiness that, I guaranteed you a good marriage, not a bad marriage. This is to the extent that we have come, that the value is there. Children are a value. With birth control, children are no longer produced by nature. They are produced by values. That's why religious people have children, secular people don't. Because it's a value to religious people. Europe is disappearing, so it has to bring people in to support the welfare state of Europe. And where do they bring them in from? Okay, enough said. And finally, the third point regarding men. I love this. When guys will tell me on the radio or, excuse me, or in private discussion, so they will tell me, well, Dennis, I'm not ready to get married. I wrote a piece on that too, just check it up. Not ready to get married. Read that piece. And it is a right. Nobody is ready to get married. Hello? You know when you get ready to get married? After you're married. That's the way it works. Who's ready to be a parent? What does that even mean? You don't even know what it is to be a parent. How could you be ready to be one? You're ready when the baby comes. That's when you get ready. First you act, then you get ready. Oh, well, Dennis, I believe in marriage, but this the guys will say, but I'll get married. I got to have a good income first. Why? You'll have a better income if you do get married. Then you're not going to spend every night at a sports bar. That's the whole point. Get married, then you'll make money. That's your whole point. That's the prosperity of the family. It's all backwards. So this is why this stuff is so important. But before we can do anything, we have to start reaffirming the value of the family, the value of a child, the value of marriage. Thank you very much.
Speaker Ryan is just moments away. Two things. I'd like to call Mike Stenhouse up. And Mike, as soon as the speaker walks in, you're let's see, what's the right term? Mike, what's the right term? You're going to be pulled. You're going to be pulled. Mike Stenhouse is a former Major League Baseball pitcher. Mike, I can't remember which team fired you first.
Expo, the old Montreal Expos.
The old Montreal Expos, and then which team was lucky enough to pick you up after that?
Minnesota Twins.
Minnesota Twins. Mike is a good friend of ours. He runs a state-based think tank in Rhode Island. He is one of these guys who focuses on the economic policies in his state, but he understands that sound economics are impacted by sound families. So Mike, would you please give some words? But of course, once Speaker Ryan walks in, now please move in without blocking the cameras because Capitol Hill security for the speaker needs those doors closed. Thank you. Thank you. Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, so.
Well, all right. I think the timeout is here. Okay.
PRs, right? PRs?
So Paul, the speaker, excuse me, just reminded me a little bit ago that we met each other 20 years ago, and I looked at him and realized Paul looks exactly the same and I clearly do not. That's a little bit upsetting to me. I think you might even be older than me. This is really frustrating. But anyway, as 48, you're younger.
No, you're older than me.
Okay, good. Well, that's good. That's good. Looks aren't deceiving. So one of the things that, Paul, we're really honored to have you here today because, as we have said, our foundation has really enhanced its efforts to try to bring together people who care about a strong economy and also believe that families are important to be the building block. Strong families help the economy. Strong economy helps families. You were, as a much younger person, in on this from the very beginning with Bill Bennett and others, and I think people here would like to hear your thoughts on why it's important.
Sure. You ever heard of the Index of Leading Cultural Indicators? Absolutely. Z knows what I'm talking about. I was just a young, wonky budget math guy working for Bill Bennett at Empower America back in those days, and I was oh, thank you. All right, was that for Bill Bennett or for Empower America or for a young, wonky guy? Okay, yeah, I'm just kidding. I grew up with mentors, and Bill was one of my mentors, and I helped crunch numbers on one of the versions of the leading index of cultural indicators. You've heard of the leading index of economic indicators. It's in the newspaper all the time. We then were worried about the destruction of the family, the degrade of our culture, and how can we, get statistics that measure this so we can build some outrage in America to try and get a case to do something about it. Well, that was back in the 1990s. It's gotten worse since then, almost every measurement. And so I would just say, whether you're reading Bob Putnam's data or all the kinds of data that's out there, it's so important that we give a wake-up call to our fellow Americans about the degrade of the family, the destruction of the family. If you ask me the biggest problem in America today, somebody would think, oh, well, you're a budget guy, it's the debt, or you're worried about national security. The biggest problem in America today, in my opinion, is moral relativism. And you cannot build a healthy society, a free society, a self-governing society, if we keep going down this path that it's all relative, that there aren't absolute truths. So, Matt and Dan, I salute you, and I know you're creating this index, which is fantastic because we have to communicate to our fellow citizens that this doesn't have to be this way, and that there is an alarm bell, and that we have to show what's happening to the family. We have to show what's happening to the economy. We have to show the degradation of our culture, of the breakdown of the family, and so that we can build the kind of outrage we need to help resuscitate and get the American idea back on track. Look, we're all trying to do our part to give the country a really clear choice, because we believe if we give the country a really clear and compelling choice, we can get our nation turned around. We can go in the right direction. That's not just government, that's culture, that's society. And we can't frame this choice if we don't have a good way to spell out the consequences. And so all I would say is, hallelujah, amen, and thank you for doing what you're doing, and just keep it up. Thank you very much. It's a big part. It's a big help. Now I'm moving CRs.
Okay, I know that many of you came to see Paul, but you can't leave. The doors are staying locked. I'm not letting you go. We've got our two economists they're kind of walled back there, Dr. Wendy Warcholik and Scott Moody. Can you guys work your way up here? They have, as Paul Ryan likes to claim that he's a geek and a numbers guy and all that. He's a numbers geek. Now we've got the really brainiacs coming up. Dr. Wendy Warcholik, Scott Moody, Wendy and Scott. Are we going to show the video first?
Oh, no.
No. I don't think so. No, go ahead and introduce Wendy.
Okay, Dr. Wendy Warcholik is one of our co-heads of this project with Scott. They have an incredible amount of experience in this space. This is not the first index that they've created. I'm going to let them tell you about the work that they've done before that really inspired them to do this work. And it's both an academic and intellectual experience as well as something that's very personal. Wendy, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Thank you, Dan. So I am just going to tell you a little story today. Let's imagine a 4-year-old girl whose parents divorce. Through her formative years, her parents would suffer 3 divorces each. Imagine an embarrassed 3rd grade girl pulled out of school every week so she can be evaluated by a court-appointed psychiatrist. Her mom wants the judge to reduce the time she spends with her dad. The little girl adores her dad. Imagine a 13-year-old girl waiting at a train station in Los Angeles in the wee hours of the morning. Her stepmother is supposed to pick her up. She never shows up. Imagine the turmoil this girl faces not having her parents there to make decisions for her about her basic necessities. She doesn't always know how she's going to pay for her clothes or her food because she doesn't always live with her parents. I just want to thank you all for coming today and sharing your valuable time with us as we release the Family Prosperity Index. My name is Wendy, and I'm an economist. Don't hold it against me. I pursued my doctorate not too far from here at George Mason. And as a young economist, I was surrounded by Mercatus and public choice professors. I marinated in libertarian economic thought. I set out with the firm belief that free market economics is the elixir to all that ails us. And an ever-growing government that takes more and more from us every year is the greatest barrier to our freedom. As such, my economic curiosity about measuring the state of our well-being led me to create a measure of how taxes impede our freedom. Along with Scott, there he is, I was the original creator of the Tax Foundation's State Business Tax Climate Index. Those stories I shared with you reveal that there is indeed real pain and turmoil associated with divorce. This pain and turmoil can show up as social costs, which include substance abuse, lower educational attainment, declining religious attendance, and STDs. I could go on, but I'm sure you get the point. Shortly after creating the Business Tax Climate Index, I had the nagging instinct that to find effective policy solutions, we needed a more complete model of well-being that addressed these social costs. There were other measures that certainly addressed the economic activity within our culture, like gross domestic product. There were also products that showed the social trends, like Bill Bennett's leading cultural indicators, which you just heard about. But there was nothing that addressed the economic and social content of the whole person, and definitely not across the states, which is what a lot of you care about here today. People used to think the Earth was flat, so we used flat maps to illustrate and navigate the Earth. Then, when we knew the Earth was round, we used a globe. Today, we use satellite imaging, Google Earth, and GPS apps on our smartphone to show the multidimensional nature of our planet. Well, the tool we developed, the Family Prosperity Index, is like these advanced tools in that it will allow you to view the multidimensional nature of America's culture. Now I'd like to play a short video for you, if I can get that going. Play.
Wise men say
Okay.
only fools rush in, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you. Oh, for I can't help falling in love.
Give extra, get extra.
Okay, so that's supposed to be a commercial about a 79-cent pack of gum. But what it's really about, as you're crying, are you crying? What it's really about is the why in life. Why do we learn? Why do we work? Why do we strive? The why is associated with the emotional or social side of a person. It's so much more than the economic factor of 79 cents. In measuring the true state of our culture, we would be neglecting the why if we just focused on the economic side of the equation. What if you had a credible measure of our well-being, utilizing government-sourced data that didn't neglect the why? Most of us in this room believe that the old fake solution of just throwing money at problems just isn't working. As a policy leader, what if you finally had a broader view of the relationship between social and economic factors based on credible data that pointed to solutions that will make a real difference for America's families? Let's consider gross domestic product. Let's. Despite that it's purely an economic measure of well-being, and thus a narrow measure of our well-being, GDP is treated as a sacred number in our society. It has the power to cause the stock market to roar or to come tumbling down. It even has the power to determine the fate of presidents. I'm about to read a quote. Listen carefully because I'm going to ask you to identify who the speaker is when I'm done. Our gross national product now is over $800 billion a year. But that gross national product, if we judge the United States of America by that gross national product counts air pollution and cigarette advertising and ambulances to clear our highways of carnage. It counts special locks for the doors and the jails for the people who break them. It counts the destruction of the redwood and the loss of our natural wonder in chaotic sprawl. It counts napalm and counts nuclear warheads and armored cars for the police to fight the riots in our cities. It counts Whitman's rifle and Speck's knife and the television programs which glorify violence in order to sell toys to our children. Yet the gross national product would not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play. It does not include the beauty of our poetry, the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, or the integrity of our public officials. It measures neither our wit nor our courage, neither our wisdom nor our learning, neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country. It measures everything, in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. And it can tell us everything about America, except why we are proud that we are Americans. So who do you think that was? Just yell it out. Anyone? Reagan? Which one? John? Robert, yes. 48 years ago, Robert Kennedy understood the flaws of gross domestic product. GDP is just one economic measure, used to measure economic prosperity, but Kennedy was begging for a fuller measure of our culture, a fuller measure of our well-being. Remember the third-grade girl at the beginning of my remarks who was forced to visit a psychiatrist even though there was nothing wrong with her? Who was abandoned at an LA train station in the wee hours of the morning? And who didn't always know how things would be paid for because her parents weren't directly involved in her life? Well, that parent, that child whose parents were divorced multiple times was me. I'm an economist, but I'm also someone very familiar with the social and economic turmoil caused by divorce. Sadly, I'm the only one amongst my siblings who created a life outside of that turmoil. Some of the unfortunate results for them are joblessness, substance abuse, government dependency, lower educational attainment, and the list goes on. What do you think the costs to society are for a family like mine who suffers these economic and social costs? Many of you know that these costs harm society and the economy. You struggle to craft policies that will mitigate these costs in the long run. But admit it, finding credible data to justify your positions is problematic. You don't have a measure that brings economic factors and social factors together. As a result, you end up merely guessing which policies might be better than others. Then you're left to defend your policy from either a purely moral or ideological basis. Your long-term solutions compete with other solutions, which may offer immediate financial relief in the short run, but that ultimately hurts American families, and that hurts us all. That's what the Family Prosperity Index will do for you. The Family Prosperity Index is a crystal clear view of how family and economic factors impact one another on a state-by-state basis. These insightful links could show you how unemployment may lead to illicit drug use, which may increase single parenthood, or how increased entrepreneurship leads to lower family poverty, or perhaps how church attendance affects entrepreneurship. Excuse me. These enhanced views of how social and economic factors affect one another come from combined credible data sources like the CDC and the Census Bureau and other recognized sources. This unique index can be used to create a more reliable and credible roadmap to solutions for problems that are plaguing our communities in America. We've developed this Prosperity Index to help you help American families. It's a tool that can put you on the offense so that you're not playing defense anymore. We hope it will empower you to do that. If you'd like to know more, please visit with us after this. Now Scott is going to come up and share with you the results from the index. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wendy. Let me pull this off before I get choked up again. As Wendy has discussed, the Family Prosperity Index will fill a huge void that exists today. The index will provide the first comprehensive, ongoing annual measure at the state level of the social and economic factors that illustrate the health of America's families. This morning, I want to go over the basic game plan of the Family Prosperity Index as we roll it out this week and over the course of the coming year. First, how is the index constructed? Like all index measures, the Family Prosperity Index will scale up to a single number, much like GDP. The scale goes from 0 to 10, with 0 being the worst and 10 being the best. This number will provide the ability to instantly ascertain the status of your state's families relative to other states, as well as over time. For instance, if your state has a score of 6.5, but your neighboring state is at a 7 or higher, then you know your state still has some work to do. But at the same time, if your score was 6.25 the year before, you at least have some indication that you know you're getting better. This simple presentation makes the Family Prosperity Index easy to understand for media, policymakers, civic and religious leaders, as well as concerned citizens. I'm going to show you the index in detail in just a moment, but briefly, the index is made up of 6 major indexes. Each of those have 5 sub-indexes themselves, which consist of nearly 60 variables. Each variable, in turn, is measured by the level in the most recent year, as well as the 5-year annual average change in that variable, so you can get some indication of whether you're improving or not. This robust structure ensures that doing well in the Family Prosperity Index is not a fluke. It'll take more than a good score in a few variables to rank well overall. At the same time, the law of large numbers ensures that no single metric overly influences the index. We have also built 5 years' worth of the Family Prosperity Index, so from day one, you'll be able to see if your state has improved or not. Additionally, each of those is measured with a consistent methodology, so that moving forward, should we decide to add a variable or take away a variable, you'll still have that consistency over time. And secondly, most indexes that exist today are static. What I mean by that is that you can only change one variable at a time in order to see its impact on your final score. For example, in the Tax Foundation's annual State Business Tax Climate Index, which Wendy mentioned, if a state were to cut its top marginal income tax rate, the score would only go up based on that single change. However, when we're talking about the large social and economic variables in the Family Prosperity Index, we know that these variables impact one another. So within the Family Prosperity Index, moving forward, we will be able to see how a change in one variable impacts 2 or more variables throughout the index. And as I mentioned, there are nearly 60 variables within the index, so the number of potential relationships is virtually inexhaustible. Let me give you an example. The best predictor today for a high birth rate is church attendance. A high birth rate, in turn, ensures that there's a healthy pool of young people, which correlates highly with entrepreneurship and economic growth. This is an example of how social indicators impact economic indicators. On the other hand, economic indicators can also impact social ones. For example, we all know that the private sector is the seed corn of the economy. So having a smaller private sector results in lower incomes and fewer jobs. These negative economic impacts can then lead to higher divorce rates and greater illicit drug use, for instance. These relationships will be determined and reinforced by a thorough review of non-biased published sources. The FPI team will also be engaged in its own research to determine other important relationships that have either been overlooked by researchers or have not been updated in many years. The dynamic relationships after the launch today will be introduced on a rolling basis moving forward. State partners. Today we're releasing the national index, but every state is at a different point, both politically and culturally, in terms of what can be productively accomplished. So we will be releasing state-by-state customized reports. Today, we are going to be having representatives from the first 3 states talk about how they're going to be utilizing their customized report moving forward. From then on, we'll be doing at least 5 states per year until every state has their own customized Family Prosperity Index. Additionally, at the state level, and I'm going to be showing you some of the state level data in a moment, but we're also going to be taking it down to the county level. And this will help better localize the problems that each state faces. The FPI team will also be dropping into each state and doing sort of a boot camp for policymakers, media, grassroots activists on how to utilize the FPI index. And I'm going to be doing sort of a short preview here in a moment of our website. Now, finally, no amount of legislative changes will have staying power unless we fundamentally change the public discourse on the value of the family in society. The impact that the index will have is going to be measured on an ongoing basis through polling. And this is important because we want to understand, are we actually changing the attitudes in America towards families? And this will give us the first hardcore data towards that. Now, what you see here is our website, familyprosperity.org. I encourage everybody to visit and like us on Facebook and Twitter. In addition, we have put all of the data that make up the Family Prosperity Index into a single website application. And you'll be able to drill down and see specifically where your state may need work or where it is doing well. So here is the opening page, and right from the beginning, you can see the top 25 states versus the bottom 25 states. So the top 5 are Utah, North Dakota, Idaho, Nebraska, and South Dakota, where the bottom 5 are New Mexico, West Virginia, Rhode Island, Mississippi, and Delaware. And you can see on the left-hand side, this is for 2016, the recent index, but you can go back and look at previous years as well. Then you can drill down by state. So as we just saw, Utah is number 1 in the index. You can see that over all 5 years, Utah's actually been number 1 for the last 5 years. And this shows you graphically the scores of your state over time. Now let's drill down into the data. This provides a nice graphical view of what I talked about earlier. So the Family Prosperity Index consists of 6 major indexes, and those are listed in red across the top. From there, you then see the 5 sub-indexes that make up each one of those. So you have 30 sub-indexes across the bottom. If you click the overview, which I won't here, but it'll go into basically what you just saw for that particular sub-index. So for economic sub-index, you'll see who ranks 1 through 50. What I want to do is I want to dive down into one of the sub-indexes, because this is where all the data is really housed. Right here, first you see it'll come up with your trend data. We've collected data for every variable that's available from 2000 to its most current year, which is generally 2014. The filters on the left, so it comes up with all 50 states. It's a really busy graph. But if you wanted to just see your neighboring states, you select your state, and it comes up with you can comparatively see with your neighboring states. Or alternatively, you can see by region. So if you were in the Pacific region, this pulls up the states here. There are other tabs. You can look at your rankings. So based on your selection, if you don't select anything, you would see all 50 states. But here I've selected the Pacific region, and you can see the top 25 or the top states and then the bottom states on the right-hand side. And if you're so inclined, if you're a data geek like myself, you can press the Data tab and actually get the underlying data. And what's great about this is it's sized in such a way that you can take your favorite snipping tool on Windows, it's called the snipping tool, and just take a picture and share on social media. So it's really simple. Save it as a JPEG and share it. Go back here. Now I want to show you one. That one was a simple, because there was just one variable within that sub-index. But there are others, and they're highlighted with asterisks. There are other sub-indexes that have multiple variables underneath them. So, let's look at personal health. So personal health consists of tobacco users, alcohol users, and the percent of population that's considered obese. And so you can select any of these up at the top, and then it will then correspondingly pull your trends and all your associated data, and you can go through and look at each one of those separately. So we're really excited about this web application because we want to be completely transparent about the data that goes into this index. This is all from government source data. The analysis used in the study all comes from credible, published analysis, so that you can have faith that what you're seeing is non-biased and credible. Let me just take this back to home. So now I would like to welcome the first state that we will be rolling the state customized report in, and that is the state of Utah. Stan Swim is the CEO of the Sutherland Institute in Utah, and he may have some of the least amount of work to do in this room, but every state has work to do. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Scott and Wendy, and thank you to the American Conservative Union Foundation for creating what I think is going to be an incredible tool for helping us understand and drive positive change in the lives of people, our neighbors, who live in our states. I think about this a little bit the way I would think about portfolio management, which is my profession. I can take one of those indexes like the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones or the Wilshire 5000 if we want to start getting esoteric. And I have a rough idea, because I build my portfolio carefully, I have a rough idea what a change in that index is going to do to my portfolio or the portfolio of my client. I do have to do more digging if I really want to understand it, but we're used to this idea of an index being able to tell us something meaningful. There's too much of American life and too much of our lives that really matter that's not visible to those indexes. I've been married to a wonderful woman for almost 18 years. Most of what she does is invisible. GDP only sees her when she goes to the grocery store. GDP does not see her when she teaches my 3 children how to make a good life, how to stay away from substances that will harm their body, how to live in a way that's going to make them powerful and productive economic participators, how to keep their word, how to study hard in school. That's invisible. But every person in this room knows how much that matters. And so to me, it's an exciting time to be looking at a tool that takes the kinds of things that we know matter, and we know that the economics matters, and we know that some of these more social measures also matter too, and we pull them together. To me, it's a great expression of the American project. What is it that was expressed at our founding? This nation is about the pursuit of happiness. And we know that that's a multidimensional thing that each of us experience. Well, it's time we started keeping score that way. It's time we started keeping score and making decisions using the best tools we can to help us pursue happiness. And we do that above all other places in our families. This couldn't be focused on a more important thing or come at a more important time. We're honored in Utah that we've been able to do well in this particular measure, but I think I saw our score was 7.38, Scott, so you're telling me that I'm a C, right? That's what you're telling me? There's more work that all of us can do, but the first thing you've got to do before you dig is measure. This helps us do that. So we're excited at Sutherland Institute where we like to think we focus on human flourishing in a broad way. That's really what this tool is talking about. It will help our policymakers who are lay legislators, give them a clear and concise way to think about their own decisions. It gives a framework for us at the Institute to dig deeper into community and local data, where we can benchmark it inside a framework that makes a lot of sense and that's been used across the country. All of those things will help us at the Institute, help our legislators, but ultimately, we want to help our neighbors make our state, Utah, a better place to live, work, and raise a family. But I think that's the exact same thing that we all want for our neighbors in this country.
And so I'm excited to be part of this project. Again, very grateful to American Conservative Union Foundation, to Dan, to Matt, and especially to Wendy and Scott for putting this together. We look forward to producing research, incorporating all this over the next several years, but more importantly, we want to see it help people thrive, prosper, and be happy. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Mike Stenhouse, who's the CEO of the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity, and he's already had a great introduction as well earlier. Come on up, Mike.
Thanks, Scott. As a bench player when I was in the big leagues, I had to be ready to pinch hit at any time. So if not the first or second inning, as we thought, it's now. Imagine being able to change the nature of the public policy debate in your state. As founder of a state-based think tank, part of the State Policy Network, our Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity is going to celebrate its 5th anniversary of defending freedom this fall. And like those of you like me who are from blue states, you know that our efforts to change and alter or modify the public policy culture faces strong headwinds, both philosophically and politically. And a lot of that because the politicians who back those policies honestly think they're doing good for families or for their constituents. And I can't tell you how frustrating it is for us at times not to be able to break through, that we're constantly looking for some new angle to have a public policy debate that catches their attention, that tells them maybe what you were doing isn't really helping lives. A few weeks ago, I took part in a workshop with Dan and Scott and Wendy and others in this room, and to learn more about the index and how it can be a powerful tool for us. And after that trip to Arlington, I came home with new hope that we might have that new angle I'm looking for in Rhode Island. You know, what if lawmakers could be convinced to realize that their policies, well-intentioned as they are, but not only weakened our state economy, which we've been arguing from an economic view for years, but also weakened the family unit? Would they think differently of it? That the liberal throw money at the problem and wash your hand approach really may not be helping lives and helping families? What if they were made to understand that looking at material needs only isn't the whole picture? What if via unimpeachable research like you see here, there were new ways, a new tool to evaluate healthy families, healthy societies, economics, unlike the measurement tools Wendy and Scott and Dan talked about? To really look at the true quality of life, the true quality and health of a family, especially our state, which you may have seen up there ranked 48th out of the 50. So what's a 3.68? How bad of an F is that? That we have to look beyond these economic measurements. So now imagine, as advocacy leaders in your state, a broader and stronger coalition that you can build behind your think tank or your group or whatever kind of organization you represent. What if you could be armed with new and potent information and a whole new angle to change that debate? New, as they've said, it's the first of its kind. It's the first time we've had this new tool. Potent, in that it gives us that new angle backed by unassailable research. We can be confident now that in raising critical questions, we have the moral high ground, something we've always lacked. They always claim the moral high ground. We claim the numerical high ground. Now we can have both, I think. Dennis Prager mentioned earlier similar questions that we can raise. You know, is a mom better off with a little extra public assistance, but maybe with a greater chance of being unmarried, having the father in prison or on drugs or underemployed or unemployed? Or is that mother better off, maybe with less public assistance, in a two-family married household, both able to gainfully work if they so choose? These are the types of questions we can ask now. What's really in a family's best interests? Now, these are sensitive issues that we've stayed away from for years. We were told not to go there. We can't win that battle. And as sensitive and as politically incorrect it may be, we must have these conversations now. We must ask these questions. We've all known instinctually that the entitlement state wasn't really helping anybody, but now, thanks to this prosperity index, now we can demonstrate that the whole quality of life, both social and economic, is important. So as defenders of freedom, I ask you to go back, learn this index, and be the Paul Reveres in your state. In Rhode Island, I think this is the angle I'm looking for. Why? Because I can imagine now reuniting social and fiscal conservatives behind my think tank. Why can I imagine it? Because it's already happened. I went back after my trip a few weeks ago, talked to a few, I guess you would call Catholic businessmen who weren't really interested in our center because they had other interests. Now I've got their attention. And they're going to introduce me to more people where they wouldn't have time for me before, really. A broader coalition, maybe it's not our number one goal, but I can even envision a broader coalition. Imagine it. Why? Because it's already happened. I reached out to a minority leader who represents the best, claims he's looking for the best interests of minority families in Providence. He's what I would term an intellectual, honest liberal, really concerned, but he's honest enough to understand that status quo policy may not be helping, and I've got his attention now. This is game-changing stuff, potentially, if we think it through and talk about it properly. So, we've been advised to stick to fiscal issues only, but at the same time, I remember the first SPN National Convention I went to, we were warned not to separate social conservatism. And I'd always conflicted in my mind. Well, thanks to FPI, we don't have to run from one and only to the other. So I think it's a whole new ball game. So let's use that analogy for a while. Let's talk about ball game, as you know. So with my former Major League Baseball career, and by the way, go Red Sox. Anyone Red Sox here? My dad was a former pitcher for the Washington Senators. Any Senators, Nationals fans here? Should remember that. And it wasn't a very successful career. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. But at least I got a free 100 opportunities to take a swing at a big league fastball. That was my dream, right? Everybody wants, everybody has a dream. Well, in one of my rare starts in 1984, I faced rookie phenom Dwight Gooden in Shea Stadium in front of 50,000 Mets fans. And that was when I was with the Expos. And the first time up, boy, he was tough. He struck me out. I went back up there the second time. I didn't fare any better, and I struck out again. But defiantly, I strode back up there for my third at-bat of the game, and this time, I struck out again. But that's life. And because of a failed public policy culture that's tearing families apart, FPI shows us that far too many of our citizen teammates are sitting on the bench or are left entirely out of the game, whether they're in prison, on drugs, unemployed, and they never really get a chance to have their at-bat and take a swing at life, a real legitimate swing at life. This is not acceptable, and this must change. So unlike the left, who see our teammates, many of them, as liabilities who need to be relegated to the sidelines, you and I see each and every one of us as a potential producer, someone who can get a base hit. We believe that every American should have the opportunity to step to the plate and take a swing at life. and then step to the plate again and swing again if they fail the first time. If we're successful in advancing family prosperity initiatives in our states, I believe we'll see more and more of our citizens who the government has abandoned, knocking base hits and maybe even belting out a few home runs and winning the game of life. This is my hope. This will be our center's goal, I can promise you that. And I hope we won't think it's too presumptuous if I believe this is the great possibility of the Family Prosperity Index. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. It's my pleasure now to introduce Julaine Appling. She's the president of Wisconsin Family Council, and she's been with us. She's been a great advocate and champion for our project since the very beginning. Just love Julaine, so thank you, Julaine.
Well, I think it's all been said. But listen, I think today is one of the greatest days in my 18 years of being involved with the Family Policy Council movement here in the United States, and I've been with Wisconsin Family Council for that long. Wendy and Scott have, I believe, given us a tool that is unparalleled. And as my friend from Rhode Island points out, I believe it's a game changer. I really do. Several years ago, I gave a speech to a group of conservatives who were kind of a mixed bag of conservatives, and the title of my speech was, "As the Family, So the State." And I pointed out some of I tried in a rough way, tried to point out the intersection of the social issues, so-called social issues, with the economic issues and how they were interdependent. It was rough, it was crude, but I could see from the looks on the faces of the people to whom I was speaking that I had hit a nerve, that suddenly they were seeing dots connected unlike they had not seen dots connected before. And I started talking to legislators about that and in Wisconsin. And you heard from my governor this morning. You heard from one of our members of Congress, who is now the Speaker of the House this afternoon. Reince Priebus is going to be on the stage here soon. And then there's me. So I'm in good company, if nothing else. But I regularly interact with these folks, and I'm constantly trying to talk to them about something that is seemingly foreign to them, and that is about the well-being of the families of our state. I call families the best natural resource in Wisconsin. It's the best natural resource we have, and I get blank looks. I haven't had the data to be able to substantiate that and kind of move the needle in the right direction. I'm going to tell you what I base that on partly. And I got to tell you, over the last 8 years, I'm less of a fan of executive orders than I ever was. But occasionally there is a good executive order. And in 1988, President Ronald Reagan, whom we are in some ways honoring through CPAC this year, wrote an executive order that he simply entitled The Family. And it was not a lawmaking order like we've been given over the last 8 years, but it was the kind of executive order that set out a policy for his administration that said, if you're going to do a project or a program or something of this nature through our administration, you need to subject it to a checklist. What is going to be the impact on the family? And it was like 25 items. One of them was, did it allow at least one parent to stay home to take care of the children? That was rough. It was crude. In 2014, our organization released a kind of a child, if you will, that was born out of the Bill Bennett's Index of Leading Cultural Indicators back in the 90s, and we released our third edition of it, Wisconsin's Index of Cultural Indicators. And we added a 30-page section to it this time, folks, and it was all about family structure, and it was based on government data. It was still rude and crude in that we couldn't make the kinds of connections that you have seen demonstrated here today. I realize that when Scott goes through some of this, and you see 50 different lines going across a graph, and you wonder, well, what exactly is that story telling? I'm telling you that that's telling an incredible story. It's a story we've never been able to show. It's a graphic representation. It's a textual representation. It is a verifiable index that gives us solid ground to say to people, folks, the dots have been connected. The dots have been connected so that Wisconsin, right now we're ranked number 18. So you had Rhode Island towards the bottom, and you have Utah leading the pack here, and Wisconsin somewhere in the middle. Now, I had the opportunity to dive down into some of this research a little bit, and I got to tell you, Wendy, Scott, as I dove down into it, Wisconsin doesn't have, not only do we have a lot of room to grow, we have some areas where if we don't grow, we're going to be in even worse shape. Because when you get down into some of those sub-indices that they've developed there, they show you how they derive this rating. And it was quite frightening to me. One thing we showed in our meager attempt at trying to put this information out through our index or indicators is that at some point there's a breaking point, folks. How long can a state of Wisconsin, for instance, how can we as taxpayers keep paying $36,000 per year for single parents where there's no intention of marrying the father of the children? At some point, there's a breaking point, a financial breaking point on that. How long can Wisconsin sustain a below replacement birth rate? We've been at 1.9 for 40 years, and it's catching up to us. Wendy and Scott talk about workforce. My friends, as simplistic as it sounds, if we don't have babies, we don't have workforce, and we don't have taxpayers. We don't have the means to sustain the prosperity that we've been enjoying in America for years and years and years. There are breaking points. Every state's going to be facing them, and collectively, we as a nation will be facing them. What you are seeing unveiled today is absolutely unprecedented. I'm so excited about it, I can't stand it. I began to wonder, because we started working on this, I think it was like 5 years ago. I can't imagine what Scott and Wendy have been going through on this. But this is an incredible opportunity for people like me who engage elected officials, who want to see good policy passed, not because I'm a political ideologue, but because I'm a champion for families. And because I believe that, as Mike said, we need to help people, we need to rescue people. We need to give them an opportunity to get up to the plate and hit the ball out of the park. At least take the swings. At least have the opportunity. And so much of what we're experiencing in our culture today is directly related to the decline, and I would say even at some point, the demise of the family unit, which is the backbone of every culture. It's the best wealth producer that we have, and on and on and on. I am looking forward to a new legislative session. We just ended ours in Wisconsin. I didn't think it would ever end, but we did bring it to a close, and we have a new one starting in January. I can't wait to take the data that is being supplied to legislators and to talk to them about what we have seen in this report. To be able to craft policies that help families truly thrive. Not just survive, not just figure out how to make it day to day, but to how to really grow and how to prosper and how to be happy. And in the midst of all that they're experiencing, there are policies that we can put in place in that. Now, I want to hasten to say, I don't believe government is the answer to everything by any means. I'm not sure that it's the answer to too many things. But this I know. Bad policies can destroy us. They can destroy us. We have decades of where bad policies are destroying us. Good policies can begin turning things around. They can help set a direction for a community, a state, and an entire nation. We've seen that before. I think the Family Prosperity Initiative and the index that it's creating gives us a great opportunity. I love the fact that on their logo, it's a new, bright, sunny day. Because that's what I want for my state. I want an opportunity for Wisconsin to get better, not so we can brag about our rank, but because I know that means our families are doing better. And when our families are doing better, not only am I happy, I know that ultimately our entire state will be better, and the individuals, and that's ultimately what we're talking about here, the individual lives that are impacted by these policies that are put in place will be better. So I close with an incredible, heartfelt thank you to Scott and Wendy for having the foresight and the vision to understand that what you did with one index could be translated into something that, in my opinion, is even more meaningful and powerful than what you've already given us. And also to the American Conservative Union for giving this initiative and this index a home. Thank you very, very much for that and for making sure that they are able to launch this project so that all of us, regardless of what state we're from, can enjoy the benefits of families that are prosperous, that are thriving. So thank you. I hope that you find the Family Prosperity Index even more than any of us have described it to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. I would now like to open it up for any questions for any of us. Well, great. Well, thank you, everyone, and I hope we'll be able to chat with you afterwards.